In this video, we're going to look at the 1/12 scale ramen toy tank and make it remote control. We're going to look at why we want to do this, sourcing the motors and fitting them, getting the electronics in place, modifying the drive sprocket, and then testing and playing with the tank. Okay, so we'll jump ahead here and look at the final product. So this is the ramen tank, the Hunter tank with the RC motors and stuff in it. But how do we get here? Like, why are we doing this? So Ramen Toy made a 1/12 scale, classified scale tank, and they were promoting it. It looked awesome. They were going to like Joe Fest and different, toy kind of shows and showing it off. And they showed, the early prototypes, and it looked really exciting, looked neat, looked fun. But then when I saw this ad, that's what really sold me on it. That it could really roll. And you'll see here in a second, they show it here going over these magazines. And look at that. You can see there's suspension in the wheels, and the drive wheel on the back is turning, and the tracks actually work. So that made it clear that this could be RC. We could put motors in there, and that could drive the track and move this thing. And here in this video, you can see Ace holding it, how huge it is. And that just excited me too, because I've always been looking at these Henlong 1/16 tanks. I have a Tiger, but I always thought it'd be cool to get an Abrams. But they're a little pricey, and they kind of don't work with 1/18 scale, and they don't work with 1/12 scale. But you can see here how the suspension moves, and they just look like a blast to kind of like roll around. The Tiger I have is cool, but I always wanted an modern tank, and so I was thinking this would be really cool to take the ramen tank and put some RC into it. Because I've also got this, the Gepard Flak Panzer, which was kind of a fun project to get going. And so I figured I knew enough to, take a chance, with this toy and make it RC. So let's go for it. Let's jump into it. All right, so when you get your tank, it's got, stickers, an instruction sheet. It's well packed. It's a great toy, and it'll make a great static model. Right away, I just took the screws out of the bottom. That opens it up so you can see inside the chassis. And you can see the suspension's really nice. It's spring-loaded, but there's tons of room, if you want to leave in the cockpit. Here I started looking at the 1/16 Henlong Tiger I have. I'd modified that. You can see those red motors in there. Those aren't standard, so I'd put those in. So I decided I would take them out of here, put back in the standard motors because they're fine for that tank. And then I'd put the red motors into the ramen tank. You can buy those on eBay. Here's an example. But you can also get plain old, the standard motors as well. I just recommend get steel gears. The black part is the gearbox, and the motors drive those gears, and that drives the kind of axle that sticks out into the drive wheels. You want something strong that won't strip. You don't want plastic gears if you can avoid it. I tried looking at some other, like smaller kind of tank setups I had, but those seemed like they'd be too weak for this. I mean, it's a big, heavy tank. And then, I tried some treads, but these treads are custom. They're huge. Then you need a controller. So I recommend, I had the 6-channel controller. So if I want to ever add like turret control, I can do that. And then this little box here, that's the receiver. It comes with the controller. So when you, turn the wheel on the controller, it sends the signals to the motors. So this is the most important part. This explains all the pieces you'll need. So you need the ESC. That's what kind of brings everything together. The battery plugs into it, gives it power. The little receiver box, that plugs into it and gets the commands from the controller. Then out of the ESC are you need 2 wires, one to go to each motor to drive the different tracks. And then the ESC will take your controls from the receiver, which come from the controller, and it'll blend them and give power to either the left or right motor, and that'll let you drive the tank sort of like you would drive a car, which is kind of neat. I think you could just, instead of using the 6-channel, you could use like a car controller with a wheel if you want. And so that's it. Once I got this up and running, it was good to go. Tested it out before putting it into the tank. Then I went about cutting off the kind of like piece that's popping out that's holding the wheel in place. You could see I did run into a problem where the wheel was constructed incorrectly and the gears did not line up, the teeth. You can see on this one, the teeth line up. But on the one side, the teeth were offset, so they weren't going into the track correctly. So you have to kind of like turn those to kind of like rip them apart and then you're able to remove that. So when I did that, I had to realign it. So here you can see I just mounted the motors. I drilled a hole in the side of the chassis to get the axles sticking out, and then made sure that was lined up. Then, it's not going to fit perfectly, so I just printed out some wedges. You could use some plastic, or just build something up. Even if you want to use wood, you can use whatever, just some kind of wedge to kind of get the axle to a good height to where it's coming out at a right angle. And then I decided to 3D print like a piece to slip into the drive wheel that's comes with your ramen tank, and that way it would interface with the axle coming out of the motor and the wheel. And so all it is kind of something that slips over there and allows me to screw the wheel on, and and then the power will be transferred from the axle into the wheel. So you can see there, just screwed it back on. The axle that comes with the Henlong motor, it's threaded to take whatever size screw that is, or like hex screw. And here you can see the test. It's working fine. Everything looks good. You can see the wheel on the left's beat up because I tried using a screwdriver to pry those apart. That won't work. Like, you just have to grab the both ends and kind of torque it and like break the wheel apart to get to the screw that's in there. Kind of annoying. But then I just hot glued those back together, and that's fine. So then I ran my first test. It was looking pretty good. The track fell off, but you'll find once you put the body back on, the side skirts actually stop that from happening. But I was running into a problem. You can see here it's just kind of turning in one direction. So the ESC, the electronic speed controller I was using, wasn't able to handle the power that those two motors needed. So I ordered this bigger ESC, and that kind of like slowed me down. It was annoying. I had to wait for it to come from China, so it took like 2 or 3 weeks. But still, it's nice to have this bigger controller. And this is the same speed controller I used in the Gepard Flakpanzer, so I knew about this problem that if you used the small 5 amp speed controller, it might not be enough for your motors. All right, so here's the new speed controller. You can see it's much bigger than the other one, and there's the receiver, so I've got everything hooked up. I just took a photo to see like where the different colored wires plugged in so I wouldn't forget. And if you end up doing this, you could probably use the same setup that I was using there. But now you can see it's going great. Yet, it throws a track every once in a while because it is nice and powerful. And I don't think that Ramen designed this to really spin at these kinds of speeds with this kind of torque. But I mean, considering it's really great. The drive wheels really grab onto that track. Like, the fact that they made it like functional like that is just fantastic. And and it rides really good. And once you get the side skirts on, it really prevents most of the tracks from popping out. So then I ended up, just taking the wiring and squishing it in the back. I drilled a hole so that the cable that you hook the battery up to would go into the passenger compartment. So just by pulling the turret off, I can get access to the battery and change it out and recharge it. And that's also your on-off switch. Just, unplug the battery and it turns off. And then, taking it for some runs. I was chasing one of my kids around with it. You can see it's just huge, but it goes really fast with these red motors. It's really fun to drive around and just, it's like a little sports car and stuff. And what's great is you can put your classified figures in there. So, I've got CoverGirl in there. She's, I think, the best of the tank drivers. And, it's just neat. You can put a lot of gear on there. I might end up making a new turret so I could put some more figures on there. But, you could easily just, have some figures riding on the outside as well. So here you can see I take the turret off, and there's the battery. It's a 2S, so 7.4 volt, and still getting some good speed out of that. So you just unplug it, and you're good to go. I could recharge the battery and then just put it back in there. I could make a case or something to hide it behind those seats. But again, it's awesome that Ramen left all that space in there. So we could fit that. And then, this was the one of the first tests I took where I brought it outside and really did some slow-mo, videoing just to see it move. And you can see those springs are working great. What's cool about Ramen using the springs is we could get new springs and readjust that and, try changing the way the suspension works. But here you can see it's really moving, and the motors are definitely delivering enough power. You see the track comes off there, but You can see with the side skirts, and if you turn the right way, it just feeds its way back on there. Now, I did run into a problem. The wheels started to slip. So I made a new 3D print adapter that kind of had those pieces sticking out so that it wasn't just friction with the bolt or the screw holding it in. You know, those pieces were actually interlocking mechanically with the ramen toy piece. And now it's, you can see here, I'm like turning the motor with my hand, which is a decent amount of torque to get that to happen. And so now I didn't have to worry about any slipping. So a lot of this has been iteration, and now I'm not worried about it. It's pretty bulletproof. I mean, if the motor's gonna spin and the gearbox is steel, so it's gonna spin. And now that those wheels are interlocked, those are gonna spin. I mean, I guess, you know, the track is gonna be the thing that probably gives and slips, or, you know, some of that plastic maybe in the drive wheel. But it cruises around. And again, this is 2S, so 7.4 volt. I've thought of getting a 3S battery. I've never done that before on a Henlong tank, like run a 3S, but might do it to get some more speed. And so that's it. It might seem complex going through all those steps, but it's really not. Once you do it, you know, it's just a motor, ESC, and receiver and a battery, and that's pretty much it. And you've got yourself an RC tank. I love how this is kind of matching up to those, you know, seeing those videos of the Henlong tanks rolling. But now I've got an even bigger, you know, 1/12 scale tank, which is just awesome, man. I mean, it's so huge. I want to take this to the park and just like drive it around and stuff. But I'll definitely be making some more videos and, you know, just playing around with this. And it's so easy to just like pop the turret off, change out the battery. You know, like I said, I'll probably get more powerful battery. We'll see about that, and just see what I end up doing to mod it. You know, I've thought about like, you know, I could do the turret. I've done that with other tanks, you know, make turret rotation. I did that with the Flak Panzer and with some of the 1/18 scale G.I. Joe tanks. But it just adds more complexity, and it's more of a pain to kind of deal with it. And, you know, it's kind of fun just driving this around, point the turret the way you want, and put the figures on it and let it go. This is fun. I got a WPL C84, and my son's driving that, and we were kind of like chasing after each other. But this is like really, really fun, just having two vehicles that, you know, now the tank is pretty reliable, bulletproof. I don't worry about it. Like, you know, it'll throw a track, but that's about it. And just having fun in the backyard playing with our toys. So I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope we see you in the next one. And yo, Joe.